but I just want to tell her in front of millions of people all over the country that I love her very much.
For decades, Danny DeVito has been one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, making audiences laugh while building an unforgettable career. But behind the fame, success, and countless movie roles lies a love story that has fascinated fans for years. Even after facing challenges that would have ended many relationships, one woman has continued to hold a special place in his heart. Now, at 81, Danny DeVito is finally opening up about the woman he says is the true love of his life. So who is she, and what makes their bond so extraordinary? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The only love that never left. At 81 years old, Danny DeVito is still doing what he has always done best: showing up. He is still acting, still creating, and still finding new ways to tell stories. He continues to play Frank Reynolds on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a role he first took on in 2006 when the show was fighting for survival. The cast needed someone who could help keep the series alive, and Danny answered the call. More importantly, he never walked away. Once he committed, he stayed. That same loyalty can be seen in another part of his life, one that matters far more than any television show or movie role. For years, people have wondered who the true love of Danny DeVito's life is. The answer has never really changed. It has always been Rhea Perlman. Even after decades of ups and downs, even after periods of separation, Danny and Rhea remain deeply connected. They still talk every single day. They still share the same favorite restaurant table. They are still legally married. But more than that, they remain partners in all the ways that seem to matter most to them. When Danny was asked what Rhea meant to his life, his answer was simple. There was no dramatic speech, no attempt to sound poetic. Instead, he spoke about the things that mattered most. We have 3 beautiful children, and now we have grandchildren. The family's growing. We participate in conversation daily. Those words may sound ordinary, but sometimes the simplest words carry the deepest truth. At 81, Danny wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply describing the person who has remained at the center of his life for more than 5 decades. Throughout his journey, Danny DeVito was often told he wasn't enough. He was told he was too short, too different, too unlikely to become a star. But he refused to change who he was. He fought through rejection, pushed past every obstacle, and built a career that nobody thought possible. Through it all, there was one person who saw something special in him long before the rest of the world did. Years ago, a young woman walked into a theater and noticed a man who immediately caught her attention. That woman was Rhea Perlman. The man was Danny DeVito. What began that night would become one of Hollywood's most enduring love stories. Life would take them through success, challenges, heartbreak, parenthood, and fame. The shape of their relationship would change over time, but the connection never truly disappeared. They may live in different houses, but they still share conversations every day. They still remain part of each other's lives in a way that few people ever achieve. Some relationships end when circumstances change. Some do not. Sometimes 2 people find each other early in life and never completely let go, no matter what happens afterward. The years in between may be complicated, messy, and unpredictable, but the bond remains. Danny DeVito first found Rhea Perlman on January 17, 1971. More than half a century later, it seems he is still finding her. But how did Danny and Rhea's remarkable story first begin? Let's find out. The night everything changed. Long before the awards, the fame, and the decades spent in the spotlight, Danny DeVito's greatest story began on a single night in January 1971. Rhea Perlman wasn't looking for love when she walked into a theater to support a friend performing in a play called The Shrinking Bride. But among the cast was a young actor named Danny DeVito. Something about him immediately caught her attention. He wasn't a leading man by Hollywood standards, and he certainly wasn't trying to impress anyone, yet there was something unforgettable about him. That first meeting sparked an instant connection. Just 2 weeks later, Danny and Rhea had moved in together. What started as a chance encounter quickly became a partnership that would last for decades. They built a life side by side, supporting each other through the uncertainties of show business while creating a family of their own. After more than a decade together, the couple married on January 28, 1982. Over the years, they welcomed 3 children into their lives: Lucy, Grace, and Jacob. No matter how busy their careers became, family remained at the center of everything they did. Their relationship extended beyond their home and into their work. Fans often enjoyed seeing them share the screen, whether it was on the hit television series Taxi or later in the beloved family film Matilda, where they memorably played Matilda's parents. Their natural chemistry made their performances feel authentic because, in many ways, they were simply being themselves. Like any long relationship, however, their journey was not without challenges. In 2012, after more than 30 years of marriage and over 40 years together, Danny and Rhea decided to separate. The news surprised many fans who had viewed them as one of Hollywood's most enduring couples. Yet even during that difficult period, neither spoke bitterly about the other. A few months later, they reconciled and tried again. Although they eventually separated for a second time in 2017, the story did not end the way many expected. There were no public battles, no ugly headlines, and no rush toward divorce.
They've been separated since 2017. As it turns out, the most surprising news of all is that they're still married, and they have no plans to get a divorce. In fact, they're actually happily separated.
Instead, they chose a different path, one built on respect, friendship, and a bond that neither seemed willing to completely let go of. In fact, Rhea later revealed that after their separation, they had become even better friends than they had been during the final years of their marriage. It was an unusual arrangement by Hollywood standards, but then again, Danny and Rhea had never followed the usual rules. Over the years, they shared homes in some of California's most exclusive neighborhoods, including a large estate in Beverly Hills and properties in Malibu. Yet, they also cherished quieter places, including a home in New Jersey, where they could escape the pressures of Los Angeles and simply be themselves. The houses may have changed, their living arrangements may have changed, even the label on their relationship evolved over time. But one thing remained remarkably consistent: neither ever completely disappeared from the other's life. More than 50 years after that chance meeting in a small theater, the connection that began that night continues to endure, a reminder that some relationships are defined not by perfection, but by the decision to keep caring long after the world expects you to walk away. Who was Danny before Rhea changed his life forever? Keep watching to find out. The boy nobody expected to become a star. Long before he became one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, Danny DeVito was just a kid growing up in New Jersey. Born into a hardworking family, he was raised alongside his 2 older sisters by parents who believed in the value of persistence and honest work. Life was simple, and fame was the last thing anyone expected for the young boy from Asbury Park. Danny's father owned several small businesses, and the family lived an ordinary life. There were no connections to the entertainment industry and no clear path leading toward Hollywood. In fact, if you had met Danny as a child, you probably wouldn't have guessed that he would one day become one of the most successful actors of his generation. Growing up, Danny often felt different from the people around him. He was smaller than most of his classmates and didn't fit the image of what many imagined a future movie star should look like. But instead of allowing those differences to hold him back, he gradually learned to embrace them. As a teenager, Danny made a surprising decision. At just 14 years old, he convinced his father to send him to boarding school. Years later, he joked that the move was meant to keep him out of trouble. Whether he was serious or not, the experience helped shape his independence and gave him a chance to discover who he wanted to become. After graduating, Danny didn't immediately set his sights on acting. Instead, he worked as a beautician in his sister's salon. It wasn't exactly the glamorous beginning people might expect from a future Hollywood star, yet that job would unexpectedly change the course of his life. While looking for a professional makeup instructor to improve his skills, Danny came across the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. What began as a practical search soon opened the door to an entirely new world. Acting caught his attention, and before long, he found himself pursuing a dream he never knew he had. He graduated from the Academy in 1966 and threw himself into theater work. The early years were far from easy. There was no instant success, no sudden breakthrough, and no guarantee that any of it would work out. Like countless young actors, he spent years learning his craft, performing wherever opportunities appeared, and trying to make a name for himself. Those theater years would prove important for another reason as well. They eventually brought him into creative circles, where he would not only develop as a performer, but also meet people who would change his life forever. Among them was a young actress named Rhea Perlman. At the time, neither of them could have known what the future held. Danny was simply a determined young actor trying to build a career. But the qualities that would later define him were already there. His resilience, his loyalty, and his refusal to give up when others doubted him. Those traits helped him survive the difficult years before fame. They also helped him build something even more important than a successful career: a relationship that would last a lifetime. Before Danny DeVito became a star, before the awards and the recognition, he was simply a young man searching for his place in the world. And without realizing it, that search was leading him toward the person who would become the greatest love of his life. How did that unlikely young dreamer become a Hollywood legend? Stay tuned to find out. The career that almost never happened. Looking at Danny DeVito today, it's hard to imagine a world where he never became an actor. His face is known across generations. His voice is instantly recognizable. His career has lasted more than 5 decades. But the truth is that Hollywood was never part of the original plan. Before the bright lights of Hollywood and television success, Danny DeVito worked in his sister's beauty salon in New Jersey. Trained as a beautician, he spent his days cutting hair and styling customers. After a client passed away, her family asked him to prepare her hair for the funeral. That led to part-time work as a morgue cosmetologist, a little-known chapter of his life before acting began calling him toward a different future. Acting had captured his attention. The stage offered a different kind of opportunity. A chance to become someone else for a while, to tell stories, and to make people feel something. By the late 1960s, Danny had begun pursuing theater work. The roles weren't glamorous, and the productions were far from mainstream. He appeared in off-Broadway plays such as Shoot Anything with Hair That Moves and The Man with the Flower in His Mouth. The audiences were small, the paychecks were modest, and success seemed very far away. But Danny kept showing up. That determination eventually led him to one of the most important roles of his early career. In 1971, he appeared in an off-Broadway production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, playing the character Martini. A few years later, when the story was adapted into a major motion picture directed by Milos Forman, Danny was asked to reprise the role. For a struggling actor, it was a major opportunity. The film became a cultural phenomenon. Starring Jack Nicholson, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest went on to become one of the most celebrated movies in Hollywood history. For Danny, it was proof that he belonged in the industry after all. But success did not arrive overnight. Throughout the 1970s, he continued taking whatever work he could find. He appeared in smaller films, television roles, and guest appearances, slowly building experience while waiting for the breakthrough that every actor dreams about. Then, in 1978, everything changed. Danny landed the role of Louis De Palma on the television sitcom Taxi. The character was loud, demanding, sarcastic, and impossible to ignore. In many ways, it was the perfect role for him. The audition itself became legendary. According to the story, Danny looked at the script, asked the creators who wrote this, and threw the pages onto the table. Instead of ruining his chances, the bold move convinced them he was exactly right for the role. The gamble paid off. Taxi became one of the biggest television shows of its era, and Danny quickly emerged as one of its standout stars. Audiences loved Louis De Palma's sharp tongue and larger-than-life personality. Critics loved him too. His performance earned Emmy Awards, Golden Globe recognition, and, most importantly, the kind of visibility that every actor hopes for. Suddenly, Danny DeVito wasn't just another working actor, he was a star. As his popularity grew, Hollywood came calling. In the years that followed, he built one of the most impressive film careers of his generation. He appeared in acclaimed movies such as Terms of Endearment, a film that would go on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. He showed off his comedic talent in Johnny Dangerously and won over audiences as the lovable rogue Ralph in Romancing the Stone and its sequel, The Jewel of the Nile. By the mid-1980s, Danny had become one of the most reliable actors in the business. Whether he was starring alongside Bette Midler in Ruthless People, playing rival salesmen in Tin Men, or sharing the screen with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins, audiences couldn't get enough of him. He had a unique ability to steal scenes without ever trying too hard. The remarkable part was that he never looked like a traditional Hollywood leading man. For years, people had told him he was too short, too different, and too unconventional to succeed. Yet those very qualities became his greatest strengths. Instead of blending in, Danny stood out. As the years passed, he expanded beyond acting. He became a producer, a director, and a creative force behind the camera. He directed films, produced projects he believed in, and earned a reputation as one of the hardest-working people in entertainment. One of his most memorable roles came in 1992 when he transformed himself into Oswald Cobblepot, better known as the Penguin, in Tim Burton's Batman Returns. The performance was unforgettable, equal parts funny, disturbing, and tragic. Just a few years later, another generation of fans fell in love with him through Matilda. Not only did Danny direct the film, but he also starred in it alongside Rhea Perlman. The movie became a beloved family classic and remains one of his most cherished projects. Yet Danny never limited himself to one type of role. He moved effortlessly between comedy and drama. One year, he could be making audiences laugh in Get Shorty or Space Jam. Next, he could deliver powerful performances in films such as The Rainmaker and the Oscar-nominated L.A. Confidential. Even animation became part of his growing legacy. His voice brought characters to life in Hercules, where he played the sarcastic trainer, Phil. Later, he would lend his voice to projects such as The Lorax, Smallfoot, Migration, and several other animated favorites. Most actors eventually slow down. Danny DeVito never seemed interested in that idea. In 2006, he joined a relatively unknown comedy called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. At the time, the show was struggling to find a larger audience. The creators hoped that adding a recognizable actor might help keep it alive. Danny agreed to join. What nobody expected was that he would become one of the show's greatest strengths. His character, Frank Reynolds, quickly became a fan favorite. Wild, unpredictable, outrageous, and completely fearless, Frank helped transform the series into one of the longest-running live-action sitcoms in television history. More importantly, Danny never treated the role as just another paycheck. He embraced the chaos, committed fully to the character, and helped guide the show through nearly 2 decades of success. While many actors spend their later years stepping away from the spotlight, Danny continued taking on new challenges. He appeared on Broadway, starred in films, voiced animated characters, produced documentaries, and even earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The remarkable thing about his career isn't just how successful it became, it's how unlikely it all seemed in the beginning. The young man styling hair in New Jersey wasn't supposed to become a Hollywood icon. The aspiring actor performing in tiny theaters wasn't supposed to outlast generations of stars. The man who spent years being told he wasn't enough wasn't supposed to become one of the most beloved entertainers in America. And yet, he did. Because Danny DeVito's story has never been about fitting the mold. It's about refusing to let other people decide what you're capable of. From funeral homes to Broadway stages, from beauty salons to blockbuster movies, he built a career entirely on his own terms. And through every success, every setback, every role, and every chapter of that extraordinary journey, there was one person quietly cheering him on from the sidelines: Rhea Perlman. As Danny's career grew larger than anyone could have imagined, the relationship he built with her remained the one constant that never truly disappeared.
Danny and I have always loved each other, and we have 3 amazing children together, and we really agree on almost everything important.
While Hollywood celebrated the actor, Danny never forgot the woman who believed in him long before the rest of the world did. But Danny's success didn't stop with acting, did it? Let's find out more. Building an empire beyond the spotlight. By the time Danny DeVito became a household name, most people knew him as an actor. They saw the unforgettable characters, the sharp comedy, and the larger-than-life personality that made him one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars. But acting was only part of the story. What many people don't realize is that Danny spent decades building an impressive career behind the camera as well. While audiences were watching him steal scenes on screen, he was quietly shaping films, discovering projects, launching careers, and creating opportunities for other artists. In many ways, directing and producing allowed him to express a different side of himself. His interest in directing began long before he became famous. Over the years, he directed several short films, experimenting with storytelling and exploring ideas that fascinated him. Some projects were funny, some were strange, and others were surprisingly dark. What connected them all was Danny's willingness to take creative risks. That willingness eventually led him to make the jump into directing larger productions. In 1984, he directed The Ratings Game, marking the beginning of a new chapter in his career. It was an important step, proving that he wasn't content to remain only in front of the camera. He wanted to understand every part of the filmmaking process. Soon afterward, he directed an episode of Steven Spielberg's television series, Amazing Stories. The project carried special meaning because it featured his wife, Rhea Perlman. The story centered on a seemingly ordinary wedding ring with a sinister secret, allowing the couple to share the screen in a memorable and unusual way. But Danny's biggest breakthrough as a director came in 1987 with Throw Mama from the Train. The dark comedy paired him with Billy Crystal and quickly became a fan favorite. Danny not only directed the movie, but also starred in it, proving he could successfully balance both responsibilities at the same time.
Billy Crystal came to me with Stu Silver's script, and he said, would you like to play Owen? And at that time, I was just like kind of feeling I wanted to direct. I'll play Owen if you let me direct the movie, because I really have a feeling for this.
The film's success earned him praise throughout Hollywood and established him as a director with a unique voice. 2 years later, he reunited with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner for The War of the Roses. The film explored the collapse of a marriage with equal parts humor and bitterness. It was funny, uncomfortable, and surprisingly honest about the darker side of relationships. Looking back, it's hard not to notice how often Danny was drawn to stories about love, family, and the complicated bonds that connect people. Then came one of the most beloved projects of his career. In 1996, Danny directed Matilda, the film adaptation of Roald Dahl's classic novel.
Chapter books. And they brought me this book that I had never heard of. It's called Matilda by Roald Dahl. And so I read the book, and it was like mind-blowing. And I said, I'd love to make this into a movie.
He also played Harry Wormwood, Matilda's selfish and dishonest father, while Rhea Perlman portrayed her mother. The movie combined humor, heart, and imagination in a way that resonated with audiences around the world. For Danny, Matilda was more than just another film. It became one of the defining achievements of his directing career. Decades later, fans still celebrate it as one of the greatest family movies ever made. Yet even as some projects succeeded, others never made it to the screen. Throughout the years, Danny was attached to numerous ambitious films that ultimately fell apart. He explored directing crime dramas, science fiction stories, romantic comedies, and biographical films. Some projects stalled because of financing issues. Others were delayed by scheduling conflicts or creative disagreements. A few simply vanished into Hollywood's endless development process. Many filmmakers would have become frustrated. Danny simply moved on to the next idea. That persistence became one of the defining traits of his career. Whether a project succeeded or failed, he never stopped creating. If one door closed, he looked for another one. One particularly fascinating example involved a film adaptation of The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. Danny spent years developing the project and assembling an impressive cast that included Morgan Freeman, Pierce Brosnan, and Saoirse Ronan. Production was preparing to begin when a serious accident involving Freeman forced everything to stop. For many directors, such a setback might have ended the project forever. Danny continued trying to revive it years later, refusing to give up on a story he believed in. That determination extended into producing as well. In 1991, he founded Jersey Films, a company that would become one of the most respected independent production companies in Hollywood. Through Jersey Films, Danny helped bring a remarkable collection of movies to life. Among them was Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino's groundbreaking masterpiece that changed independent filmmaking forever. He also helped produce Get Shorty, Gattaca, Garden State, and Erin Brockovich. The success of Erin Brockovich was particularly significant. The film became a critical and commercial hit, earning widespread acclaim and even helping Danny secure an Academy Award nomination as a producer. For someone who had once been told he didn't fit Hollywood's image, it was a remarkable achievement. But Danny wasn't interested in producing only prestige films. He embraced comedy just as enthusiastically. His company played a major role in bringing Reno 911 to audiences, helping create one of television's most recognizable comedy franchises. The show's success eventually led to feature films and later revivals. No matter the genre, Danny seemed to have a talent for spotting projects with potential. What makes his producing career even more impressive is that he never treated it as a side job. While many actors occasionally attach their names to productions, Danny became deeply involved in developing stories, supporting filmmakers, and helping projects reach the finish line. As the years passed, family became increasingly important to his work. Rather than slowing down, he found ways to create alongside the people he loved most. He launched Jersey Films' Second Avenue with his daughter Lucy and son Jake, turning filmmaking into a true family business. Together, they worked on new television and film projects, continuing the creative legacy Danny had spent decades building. It was another reminder that for him, success was never just about awards or box office numbers. It was about sharing the journey with the people who mattered. That idea seems to appear again and again throughout Danny's life. Whether he was directing a movie, producing a television series, or launching a new company with his children, family remained at the center of everything. And perhaps that's why his relationship with Rhea Perlman remained so important, even after years of change. While Danny built an extraordinary career behind the camera, he was also building something far more valuable at home. Every movie, every production company, every creative risk became part of a much larger story. A story that always seemed to circle back to the same people: his children, his grandchildren, and the woman he first met in a theater all those years ago. Because for Danny DeVito, success was never measured only by the films he directed or the projects he produced. It was measured by the family he built along the way. And no matter how many careers he created, movies he directed, or awards he earned, the relationship that shaped his life more than any other was still the one he shared with Rhea Perlman. Long before Hollywood recognized his talent, she believed in him, and long after the cameras stopped rolling, she remained part of the story. How did Danny turn his challenge into strength? Stay tuned to find out. Turning challenges into strength. One of the challenges Danny DeVito faced throughout his life was a rare genetic condition called multiple epiphyseal dysplasia, which affected his bone growth and contributed to his height of just 5 feet tall.
The reason behind DeVito's height is medical. According to Yahoo News, the beloved actor was born with Fairbanks disease, also known as multiple epiphyseal dysplasia, or MED.
While many people saw his size as a limitation, Danny turned it into one of his greatest strengths. Away from acting, he is also a passionate music fan. Introduced by his son Jacob to musician Mike Patton's work, Danny became a longtime admirer, collaborated on a music video, attended concerts, and even included music from Patton's band, Faith No More, in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So what do you think of Danny and Rhea's story? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, this was never just about Danny DeVito's incredible career or his decades in Hollywood. It was about a love story that survived fame, success, challenges, and the passage of time. Through every chapter of his life, one person remained a constant presence: Rhea Perlman. Their relationship may have changed over the years, but the bond between them never truly disappeared. At 81, Danny's words make one thing clear: she has always been the love of his life. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more inspiring celebrity stories.